I have more of like slicing tomatoes than I do of Romas. So I might end up this year doing more salsa than sauce.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have been saving my tomatoes and freezing them, and I had a neighbor give me some extra tomatoes that he had, and I finally have enough to where I can now start doing some preservation projects with these tomatoes. And today we are actually going to do a salsa recipe. I am using the ball zesty salsa recipe. It calls for 10 cups of chopped tomatoes, 5 cups of green bell peppers, 5 cups of onion, 2.5 cups of hot peppers, 1.25 cup of cider vinegar, 3 cloves of garlic, 2 tablespoons of cilantro, salt, and hot pepper sauce. So that is the recipe that we are following today, and I can put a link below to where I got the recipe. What makes this like really exciting to me for this canning recipe is, the tomatoes, a good portion of them were from my garden, some were from my neighbor. Um, some of the bell peppers came from my garden. Um, the jalapenos came from my garden, and the garlic came from my garden. So the night before, I already like washed and got all of my ingredients together. I got the tomatoes and the jalapenos out of the freezer and into the fridge so they can start defrosting. And yeah, so the night before was all about prep, making sure I had everything ready. And then the morning of the canning, I went to the store and I got the remaining ingredients that I didn't have. And then we canned. We canned salsa. So here's the step-by-step process of how we canned our salsa, and wait till the end of the video to see how the final product turned out. Warning, warning, don't be like Kristen. Wear gloves when you're cutting your jalapenos. I didn't have any. I honestly didn't think I needed them. Um, Cutting them was not the problem. The problem was I had for about like 5 to 6 hours after cutting them, I had like an afterburn. My hands felt like they were on fire for those 5 to 6 hours. So wear your gloves. Do yourself a favor. And this is the final product of our Zesty Salsa. I made the decision to chop the vegetables up a little bit thicker. And that's just because of my little choppy machine. It's either like really, really tiny or like bigger chunks. And I decided to go with bigger chunks. The main reason being is actually my family and I, we prefer our salsa more of like a, I guess like a blended or picante style. We don't really like thick, chunky salsa. And unfortunately, I could not find any recipes that were like, researched and safe, reputable, where you could actually already do like all the blending of everything beforehand to make it more of a thinner salsa rather than chunky. And so I actually emailed our extension office here. They told me that pretty much my options were to, after I canned it, whenever I go to use it, then I can blend it, but do not blend it before because I could alter the safety, uh, you know, the recipe's safety. We don't, right now, I am very new to canning. I am following these instructions to a T because I don't need that kind of botulism stress in my life. So I had a little bit of salsa left over yesterday from canning. And so I actually went and I blended. So this is what it looks like after being blended. I used an immersion blender. And we're just going to do a quick taste test of this salsa. When I first blended it, it was very, very thin. And I tried tasting it, and it was too thin, a little bit too watery. And, but now that I have put it in the fridge, it has definitely thickened up a lot better. So let's give this Zesty Salsa a taste and see how we like it. Has a good flavor. Not too much heat, but you got a little bit. All right. I think that's pretty good. Pretty good for my first time making salsa. I like this recipe. I think it's pretty good. And it blended up perfectly for us. Not too thin, not too thick. That's a really good consistency. So that turned out good. I'm trying to think if I would do anything different for this canning recipe. And well, obviously I'm not going to change the recipe, but there is something I think that I would have done differently in hindsight. See, I have been freezing my tomatoes. And one thing that would have been easier was if I already cored the tomatoes before freezing them. Because whenever I was trying to core them, some of them, they were kind of defrosted, a little bit more mushy, and it just made it a little bit more difficult to get the core out. Whereas I think if it was much firmer, cutting out the core, that would have been more simple in the long run. So I think, from now on, if I have to freeze them, definitely core them first before putting them in the freezer. But one thing that was nice about being frozen, I got to skip that whole step of where you have to like put the tomatoes in the boiling water in order to take the skins off. Whenever you freeze the tomatoes and they defrost, the skins just peeled right off. And so that made it actually more simple being able to do that and not having, not having to go through that step of having to put in boiling water for like a minute and then put it in ice bath to let it cool off and then peel off the skins and core it. So it did take away one of those steps to make it a little bit easier. let's see, is there anything else? I mean, the whole thing about the canning of this salsa, the worst part of it was all the chopping of the vegetables. I was chopping. I felt like I was in here for 2 hours just chopping vegetables and cutting the tomatoes and getting all of that ready. That took the longest time to be able to do that. And I honestly don't think that there's any other way to shortcut that. And when it does come to canning, I'm not necessarily looking for shortcuts because I don't want to mess with the safety of canning. Again, safety is number one on my priority list right now because I'm new to this and I'm not comfortable with it yet. So, I'm following these rules. But if there is a way I can try and make any of this process a little bit more simple, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a way. Thank you for everyone watching this video. I hope you enjoyed and had fun along the way as we canned our first salsa together. How exciting. Hopefully there's going to be more canning projects to come. But thanks again for watching, and I hope you all have a blessed day, and we'll catch you on the next video.